1 minute left. Seconds left.
Quality of life. Life itself. What does that mean? The affirmative team says that it's the government's job to tell us what our quality of life means, and that the government should tell us what's good for us and what's not, and keep us from access to things that could be potential dangers. Now, let's take, for example, last week after the tournament. We were all exhausted, tired, we had worked hard, debated really hard, while Evelyn and I were hungry, and Josiah and his partner were hungry, so we went to Outback Steakhouse. Now, this is one of Josiah's favorite things to do. Go to Outback Steakhouse and get the bloomin' onion and the cheese fries with like the ranch dressing, you dip it in and all that. Now, did this enhance our health? No. In fact, Men's Health magazine decided that the bloomin' onion is the worst appetizer in the country you could possibly ever eat. And that overall the worst food in America is the cheese fries with over 2,900 calories and 182 grams of fat in one plate of cheese fries. Now, my point is, the reason we did this was not because it was healthy, but because it enhanced our quality of life. It made us happy. And that's what I'd like to call the freedom of fatness, which the affirmative team is not allowing to you. They're setting a bad precedent for our country that the government has the ability to take away your freedom to be fat and to eat what you want and to do what you want, to take the drugs that you want to take. And that brings me right into the disadvantages. I'm just going to let my partner go back on the on case. My partner addressed every point of their case with at least a couple responses. Most of these responses were dropped, so I'm going to let him talk about that. Topicality is no longer an issue. So let's get straight into the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1 is that of the nanny state, or the restriction of the freedom of fatness. And that is what the affirmative team's case is doing. They're not allowing us to have all the things that we may want, even though the government deems them as unhealthy. For example, let's think of all the potential dangers. Let's look at the mindset of the affirmative case, and that is that there are potential dangers out there that the government needs to protect you from. So let's say you go out of your house, you get into a car. Sorry to break it to you, you all made it here, but it is a miracle you made it because you have a 1 in 100 chance of dying in a car accident in the course of your life. So the government could, to protect us from potential dangers and to save the environment, all those carbon emissions, ban cars. But this is not right because we don't want to set this type of precedent of government intervention in our lives. And that is what they are doing. Now, let's see. There are plenty of things we could go on and on about. For example, bathtubs. Drowning kills 616 people on accident within our age bracket every year. We could ban bathtubs, we could ban cholesterol, we could ban trans fats, we could ban all of these things simply because they're potential risks. However, this is not the precedent we want to set, and it is a harmful precedent. So this is a voting issue because this sets a standard of government practice, and future policymakers may be like, hey, we can ban GM foods. Why don't we ban trans fat? Hey, why don't we ban cigarettes? Why don't we ban Outback Steakhouse cheese fries? That is not the type of world we want to live in. Maybe Hugo Chavez wants to live in that world, but we do not. All right? Now let's go down to the second disadvantage, and that is of pesticide use. Now, GM crops, genetically modified ones, have staggering potential to reduce pesticide use around the world. Now, pesticides are something that's clearly harmful to both human health and the environment. Unlike genetically modified foods, pesticides are poison, okay? What we've seen is that they especially provide hope for developing countries where they don't have to pollute their environments with pesticides. I'd like to read a piece of evidence that talks about how the use of pesticides can be reduced by GM foods. And this is from the CSA senior editor at Life Sciences, Biotechnology, Immunology, Oncogenes and Growth Factors at Mary Washington College in 2000. And he says pest-resistant crop losses from insect pests can be staggering, resulting in devastating financial loss for farmers. He goes on to explain how growing GM foods such as BT corn can help eliminate the application of chemical pesticides and reduce the cost of bringing a crop to market. Monsanto has created a strain of soybeans genetically modified to not be affected by their herbicide product Roundup. A farmer grows these soybeans, which then only require one application of weed killer instead of multiple applications, reducing production costs and limiting the dangers of agricultural waste runoff. What we have here is that pesticide use will be going up with the affirmatives plan, and with our counter plan, we will not have to use as many pesticides as we allow science to develop these technologies that some already have and some we have potential development for even better uses of GM foods than preventing pesticide use. So that's disadvantage 2, increased pesticide use. Now, disadvantage 3 talks about the potential scientific benefits of all GM foods and how they can do things even greater than that. And that, especially in developing countries where people are starving and we actually do have an imperative to help them. I'd like to quote from the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican, which of course is its own country, so we do have an ambassador to there. And it's in 2004, he remarked at an assembly at the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. He said, "A hungry world needs to be fed, and biotechnology offers tremendous potential to meet this obligation to our fellow man. Meeting this obligation is essential because hunger and malnutrition are an affront to human dignity, and the advancement of human dignity is the most basic goal of a civilized world. It is also the foremost objective of American foreign policy because we recognize that when we commit ourselves to combating hunger and malnutrition, we can make our world more peaceful and more secure." So not only is combating malnutrition the right thing to do, it is also the foremost objective of our foreign policy. And what we have seen in the case of India is that a particular cotton crop, which is bioengineered to be resistant to insect pests, has shown tremendous potential for increasing yields in India. 10 million farmers in developing countries right now use GM crops. And India went from being a country that had to import all of its cotton to being the second largest exporter of cotton since the use of BT cotton. This is from Paul Valley, a journalist, in 2006. He says, "In developing countries, 10 million farmers, 90% of them small-scale producers, are growing pest-resistant GM cotton. In India, production tripled last year to over 3.6 million hectares. It has turned the country from a net cotton importer 5 years ago to the world's second largest exporter today." So what we see is that there are scientific advances that we are already capable of, and also there is tremendous potential for the future. In 2008, Stephanie Backus said, "The promise of GM foods is great, and their possible benefits are boundless. From decreased use of pesticides to increased nutritional value, biotechnology can serve a multitude of humanitarian purposes, improving both food and the environment." This is what we want to hold on to, the hope for the future, to change that's better than the change of Obama's administration. Thank you.
All right, in the beginning of your speech, you talked about how really America